Hello everyone, it's Saturday again, so that means today is another episode of Saturdays with Dad. And what's today's video?
Today's video, we're now going into the 90s. We're going to explore the albums that I particularly like and that we have between 1990 and 1994. We're splitting the two segments up similar to that of the 70s.
Because there's a lot.
Simply because, obviously, as Neve said, there's a lot. But there's also a lot to talk about because in the 90s there was a lot of things happening. It wasn't just Britpop and everything. I've got to say one thing before we start, that I know there possibly will be a few people out there that will be quite dismayed by the lack of Britpop that there is in this selection, simply because, well, it's what I like, and I wasn't such a massive fan of Britpop. I mean, I know there were some seminal albums out there, sort of like The Verve, Pulp, you know, and bands like that, and Suede. I mean, they're good, but they wouldn't
make
for
your
me
list.
Make my list.
Okay, so do you want to start then?
Yes.
We'll
fine.
start with 1990.
So, this is Primus. It is Frizzle Fry. There are other albums by Primus that are very, very good, but this is the one I like the most. I think they're a really incredible band, not least their bass player, who I think is one of the best bass players I've ever heard, Les Claypool. This is, again, very exploratory. There's, you know, some fantastic stuff on here. And, you know, I would say it would be remiss of me not to put this one in the list. So this is Frizzle Fry by Primus.
That's the only 1991 that we have, so we're going into 91 now.
So this is Guns N' Roses. I had the pleasure of seeing them in the 80s. They were very, very good. And there's the whole album's got some great stuff on it. I think it's got Knocking on Heaven's Door, which is a good version of
That's
of
on
it.
that's on the other Use Your Illusion.
Yeah, I sort of kind of put them together, but and also November Rain, which is a great song as well. And they were a really huge rock band, sort of between 85 and 95. They were almost Led Zeppelin-esque, and they were sort of selling a real big arena band. So this is Use Your Illusion by Guns N' Roses. I think everybody probably know that this was going to come up. This is Metallica's Black Album. It's, you know, basically the band becoming, if not more mainstream, but a lot of they became a sort of more acceptable voice compared to the 80s stuff, which was very, very good, you know, Ride the Lightning or Master of Puppets. But this one was the true big seller for Metallica. You know, it's got the great, you know, Nothing Else Matters, and of course the wonderful Enter Sandman. And I think that, again, it's a seminal album. I love it. Neve does as well.
I introduced you to Metallica.
Yep, and we've seen them a couple of times, and they've been brilliant. And I think you have to have this album in the 90s as well, certainly between 90 and 94. So this is the Black Album by Metallica.
We can't show the cover for this one, but we can show you the back.
So this is Nevermind by Nirvana. Sorry. This is probably the album of the 90s. I like it a lot. It's a fantastic album. It just really has to be in this list because it was such a brilliant album. And you know, the tracks and the singles from the album, I mean, they roll off the tongue. You know, it's just fantastic. I mean, my favourite is Smells Like Teen Spirit, but there's other stuff on it, Come As You Are and things like that. And this is one of the great, truly great albums. This is Nevermind by Nirvana. So we're starting into 1992, and possibly my favourite group of all time, well, not of all time, but from the 90s and into the new millennium, Fish. Trey Anastasio, John Fishman, Mike Gordon, and the wonderful Paige McConnell as well. This album has got some great stuff on it. The Tweezer and the reprise on this is good. Stash is fantastic, and also one of my favourite tracks of Fish, Chalk Dust Torture.
No more.
So Chalk Dust Torture is just an amazing track on this, and so this album has to be on my favourite between 90 and 94. Both, thanks very much. So this is A Picture of Nectar by Fish.
Please excuse the cat. Next up.
So this is good old Iron Maiden, Fear of the Dark. Not my favourite of their albums, but still a great album. The sort of theatrics rock. Again, in a way, harking back to an older generation of sort of dramatic rock, and
Prog.
And possibly prog as well. And you know, they kept true to form, and this is a fantastic album as well. And I've always said that out of all the later bands, probably Iron Maiden were my favourite in that sort of rock genre, and Fear of the Dark is just an example of that. It's just a great album. So this is Fear of the Dark by Iron Maiden.
Next up.
Pantera, Vulgar Display of Power. I love this album. I think they were a really good band, and they're carrying on the great tradition of southern rock and metal as well. There's the wonderful Walk on this album, which is brilliant, but the track on this I like is the finisher, it's Hollow. Hollow is a great track, and this is a truly great album. So this is Vulgar Display of Power by Pantera.
Okay, right. We're going into 1993 now. Here's the first one.
Oh, right. So another of the seminal 90s groups that I liked, the Smashing Pumpkins. And this is Siamese Dream. And this is, I believe, their best album. I love Hummer on this, and I like Quiet. But the whole album is wonderful, and a great band, and this I think is their best album. So this is Siamese Dream by the Smashing Pumpkins.
Favourites of mine.
I'm getting into Neve's good books here. Undertow by Tool. A real, sort of like almost modern day Sabbath-esque sound, very dark and brooding, and this album I like a lot, but later Tool albums I prefer, but this was fundamentally a great album, and it really set off Tool to being the great band that they are, and you know, it would as obviously in my top 1994 albums. So this is Undertow by Tool. I think I produced this album before in another Saturday with Dad's thing. It's just Fish. I know this is ridiculous because I normally try to have an album from a different band, but this I can't. I have to have Rift in here. Rift is just, again, we're talking about dark albums. This one is a dark album. I mean, there's so Genesis-y here. There's so my friend, he's got a knife. I mean, just it's just straight out of Genesis, and it's no surprise that Trey Anastasio is such a big fan of Genesis. You can hear this music, but I mean that there's some other great stuff on this, but to me, Rift is up there with Fish's finest albums, and this one is so brilliant. This is Rift by Fish.
Lastly, of the first half is 1994. It's his first one.
So I feel I'm doing Britpop a disservice, so I have to put one album in. And if I have to put one album in, it would be this one. Definitely Maybe by Oasis. I think this album is a country mile better than What's the Story, Morning Glory. I mean, Live Forever is an absolute brilliant anthem, and it's just cigarettes and alcohol. It's got all the good stuff on here. This is Oasis, to me. I know it's the first album, but at their finest, this is definitely Maybe by Oasis. Oh, this is the decade that my hero died, Jerome Garcia.
That's Jerry Garcia.
Yeah, that's his real name.
Okay.
Jerry Garcia, for me, if not technically the finest guitarist, just the guitarist I love the most. And with the Grateful Dead, with the likes of Lesh and Weir and Kreutzmann, they've just formed one of my favourite. Well, they'll be, I have to say, possibly my favourite band of all time. They epitomise everything that I like, and this album is a live album taken from concerts between 92 and 95. Now, I know we're going only up to 94 on here, but
it's still technically the first half.
It's still technically the first half. And the thing about this album is that although it's a live album, these were songs that they recently composed, which they were going to put on a studio album.
Okay.
But because of the death of Jerry, that was put on hold. But this is some great stuff on here. And it's the Dead coming back from the 80s as a force again. This is a great album. Ready or Not by the Grateful Dead.
Lastly.
And certainly not least, and I've done it again. Fish. This is Hoist by Fish. And there's some great numbers. I mean, you like Axela, don't you?
That's good.
Axela and Julius as well. This is, again, the lads' consistent form, consistently brilliant, consistently wonderful. This is Hoist by Fish.
That concludes today's video, but we have got one album on here that we don't actually have in the collection currently, which is Radiohead's Pablo
Honey.
Which was 93, but we don't have that, so just thought we'd put it in at the end.
We will be correcting that. Yeah.
So yeah, other than that, that's the end of the video. What are your thoughts on the first half of the 90s then?
Yeah, very good. I mean, as I said at the beginning, that this was the formative decade of what they call Britpop in this country, and we had the eternal struggle between two bands, Oasis and Blur. I actually, in many ways, prefer Blur more to Oasis, because I think Damon... They're better musicians. Damon Albarn has got some really good ideas. And, you know, I am sorry, but, you know, this is what I liked listening to. And I fully appreciate how good bands like Suede, Charlatans were and everything in the 90s. But this is me, this is what you get.
We should do a 90s list with Mum.
Yeah.
It should be...
Yeah, my wife is much more of a Britpop fan. She likes stuff like, you know, Oasis and Blur and things like that, and Kula Shaker. But as I say, these are the albums that I consider sort of like my favourites in that first part of the 90s.
quite a variation as well with different albums. Because
Yeah.
you've got metal, you've got grunge and Britpop and prog. Even.
Yeah, and also psychedelic
Arena rock.
Yeah,
Stuff like
psychedelic
that.
rock with the Dead. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the end of today's video. Next week, obviously, is going to be 95 to 99, the conclusion of the 90s, and then onwards to the 2000s.
Onwards and upwards, as they say.
My era, I guess,
Yes.
of music. But anyway, see you all next week then. I'll see you tomorrow. But yeah, bye-bye.
Have a good week. Cheers. Bye.